Tell about a new survey out by the Brenthurst Foundation. It's revealed that the ANC could lose its majority in the 2024 general election. The DA is expected to get an increase, slight one, that is, in numbers. The survey was conducted with a sample of 1,000 registered voters. Let's talk about this with Wayne Sussman, who is an expert on issues around elections data specifically, and a regular here on Daytime Update. Wayne, good to see you, as always. So, I'm sure you've had time to look at this survey. What's jumped out for you?
Thank you, and I'd much rather be in the studio with you. Next time I'll make sure I'm there. So it's a very interesting survey. One of the key main takeaways is that the ANC would fall below 50% in the next election. And that is a very important voting statistic, because what it means is that obviously the ANC will lose its outright majority and would need to find coalition partners to continue governing South Africa, a situation which we haven't seen in the democratic South Africa, and would be a very new and stark development. The piece of data which really stands out for me is the one which says that the Democratic Party would be on track for growth, because there were a whole raft of by-elections last night, and one of those results would be particularly concerning for the Democratic Alliance. Remember, when we look at a percent, let's say the ANC got 57, 58% in the last election, that 57, 58% of the voter turnout is comprised of people, a lot of voters in the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. When one looks at the DA increasing its vote share, that's also comprised of people. It needs the registered 24.5% of the registered voting of the voters turning out to vote in the next election to cast their ballot for the DA, and that includes obviously a lot of people in urban areas, white South Africans, coloured South Africans, Indian South Africans, and the DA seems to have a particular challenge with Afrikaans voters at this particular juncture. So that's why that figure does stand out on this particular day in late November 2024.
And what you point out is quite important, is it not, Wayne? Because when you look at the Brenthurst survey and what it says about ANC support, it would drop by nearly or around 10%, yet the DA's gains would be at under half of that. And given that it's been the country's main opposition for so long, why has it failed to overcome either its weaknesses in reality or the perception that it's still a party mainly for white interests?
We have to go back to Schweizer Reinecker, I think it was early 2019, before the last elections. And that's where the DA hit a major roadblock with Mmusi Maimane at its helm, and it couldn't recover from that. On the one hand, in the 2016 local government elections, the DA put the case that it was becoming a party for many South Africans. It had its record number of black voters. Most of the minority communities in this country got behind the DA. And since 2019, it hit a roadblock. Ultimately, it resulted in the ousting of Mmusi Maimane, John Steenhuisen taking over. It was a very tough election, the last local government election for the Democratic Alliance. They went backwards, so did the ANC, of course. And now we find ourselves in a situation where the DA was having a good set of by-election results, particularly in the Western Cape, particularly amongst coloured voters. But in the last 2 weeks, it's hit a serious obstacle with white Afrikaans voters, which is a core part of the reason why they are the official opposition. White Afrikaans voters, whether it's in Bella Bella in Limpopo, around the hot springs over there, to last night in a super safe DA area in Paarl, in the northern part of Paarl, the DA is losing a lot of ground. So that is why I would say that there might be a particular misalignment when one looks at the results of the survey and the last couple of by-elections for the DA.
Right. And while about 25% of the people from the Brenthurst survey have said that they would be in favour of a coalition government, It's interesting, is it not, that the numbers, if the chips were to fall as per the survey, 47.6% compared to the DA around 24%, it would still leave the ANC with enough wiggle room to form a government that does not include or need the DA.
That is correct. So one of the big discussions we're seeing right now is we see it online, not even every day, it's every 20 minutes, the Action SA and the DA sniping at each other. The DA accuses Action SA of wanting to ultimately get into bed with the EFF because Action SA says we'll not work with the ANC under any condition. And then you see the Action SA accusing the DA of wanting to climb into bed with the ANC. So while these two opposition parties snipe at each other, the Freedom Front, I just want to go off on a very quick tangent, the Freedom Front comes along and its supporters know under no circumstances will the Freedom Front want to work with the EFF or the ANC, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're growing. But in that scenario of the ANC falling under 48%, under 50%, we would have a few options. One of them would be to go to the EFF, and the survey said that the EFF will get about 11% of the vote. Another would be to have this government of national unity, where you'd have the two largest parties in the country, the ANC and the DA. Another option, which I think is probably the most plausible on this late November day in 2022, is that the ANC would find some smaller parties who would be able to do business with and get a majority of 201 out of the 400 seats and form a government where they wouldn't be beholden to by a much larger party. But we've got a long way to go. We've got many more by-elections coming up, especially in the next few weeks, and we'll be able to see how the survey measures up to what South Africans are thinking in many of the cities, towns and rural areas of this country.
And I must correct something that I said going into that question. I said about 25% of the people surveyed were in favor of a coalition. It's in fact more than 3/4. But on that 25%, that figure has to do with the number of people surveyed who said that corruption was a challenge that needs the most urgent attention. Surprisingly, only 16.8% of participants believe that load shedding is a major challenge. Did that surprise you?
Well, maybe South Africans are becoming accustomed to load shedding. We know that in the 2006 elections in Cape Town, one of the key reasons why Helen Zille became mayor was anger at load shedding. Maybe it will re-emerge that South Africans will become more and more frustrated if the electricity challenges don't get sorted out. So I think it was surprising as low down, but I think something like load shedding and infrastructure, whether it's water or maintenance of roads, can definitely come back to bite those who are in charge, whether it's the ANC in 8 of the 9 provinces and on a national level, whether it's the DA in the Western Cape and the city of Cape Town and Nelson Mandela Bay, or the IFP in some rural parts of northern KwaZulu-Natal.
This is a survey, it must be said, of 1,000 people who said that they are determined or want to vote in the 2024 general election. Given the size of the sample, how much attention should we pay to these predictions? How much room for error is there?
Well, one of the reasons why I got such little sleep last night is because there's so few opinion polls, and that's why I look at by-elections so closely, because I think it's a barometer of what certain parts of the country look at. So I welcome this opinion poll, and hopefully there will be more opinion polls in the run-up, both to the ANC's national conference and the run-up to the 2024 elections. South Africans are starved of opinion polls if you compare us with other countries around the world where elections get held. And we need more opinion polls, and we need to measure it up with the data of by-elections and local government elections, etc., to see what the country is thinking at a particular period in time.
Wayne Sussman, thank you for your time today. Let's get you across news from other parts of the